guys, today we're going to take a look at the new Terminator X for the Fox body. So this is a new kit that came out from Holley. This is a plug and play for the Fox body. It's a Terminator X, so just like all the LS guys have been getting to play with, now you Fox body guys will have something. So I haven't even opened this thing up yet. I just got the tape. Let's go take a look at what's in it. So, all right, right on the top. Here's a good thick wiring manual that y'all are probably going to do this with and not read, but we'll get back to that here in a minute. We've got our main power harness for the ECU. These are the same main power harnesses that are used in the HP, the Dominator, and the Terminator X and X Max, so they all interchange. And then we have, what's in here? This should be the ECU. Here we go. There's the ECU. This is the Terminator X, not the X Max. Same LED indicators, which we'll reference here in a minute. And then you've got your J1A and your J1B plugs, and then this is your power plug over here. And then an onboard map sensor. So for a non-boosted application, you could run this right to the intake manifold. So there's the ECU. Then we've got, what's this? Air temp sensor. So this is a GM style air temp sensor, so you'll swap out your air temp sensor for this. Got a coolant temp sensor. So this is again is a GM style. You'll swap out your coolant temp sensor on your Fox body with one of these. What do we got here? We'll get to that here in a second. This is an input-output harness. I'll touch back on that in a second. Here's the main engine harness. So this is, should look familiar for you guys that are already afloat with Holley, but this is your main engine harness, and there should be some changes here to base around a Fox body. So let's open this bad Larry up and take a look. So here's your plugs for the ECU right here, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but you've got a bigger one and a smaller one. Bigger one, smaller one. Click, click, they plug right in. We have, follow it down from the ECU, and we get to this area. So right here, this should look familiar to some of you guys that have done Holley before. But the first thing we'll look at is the input-output harness. So notice it's labeled, right? They've changed their labels recently. These are a little bit nicer. So there's your input-output harness. What you'd do is you would take this connector off. Sorry, I'm pretty weak in my left arm. And then here is the supplied input-output harness. So for you guys, the turbo guys that have got, a boost controller, or whatever you're doing with it, this is where you're going to grab your inputs and outputs from. Right here, it's supplied. The next thing down the line, we've got 3 loose wires, coming out of the harness. So one is a chassis ground. So this is a good chassis ground. Don't use a self tapper. Find, into a piece of sheet metal. Find a good chassis ground. Then your next is switched 12 volt switched. So what that means is this wire needs to have power while cranking. Okay, it needs to have power when you turn the key on, and it also has to have power while you're cranking. So if the key is in the on position and it has 12 volt, but then you hit the key to the starter and it doesn't have 12 volt, it shuts the ECU off, so it won't start. Okay, and then this last one here is a green wire. It's 12 volt fuel pump. So this is recommended to be a trigger for another relay for a fuel pump. There's very few and far between instances where you can get away with running a fuel pump off of this wire. I don't suggest it. Add a relay close to your fuel pump, and then trigger the relay with this. So next we get into the CAN bus. So the CAN bus connector is right here. All right, it's 4-pin Mizzou connector, just like all the HP Dominator and all the other Terminator X. So right here is your CAN bus. This is where your 3.5-inch dash is going to plug into. Hang on a sec. Here we go. Here's your dash. So, open this up. Here's your dash. So you got your little, oops, got an SD card that came out of her. Comes with an SD card. Whatever. Anyway, there's your dash, little 3.5-inch guy, and the Mizzou connector off the end of it, and it plugs right into the CAN bus connector like so. Now, there's a couple different people out there making CAN bus Y splitters and whatnot. So if you wanted to run if you wanted to run a 7-inch dash or the 12.3 dash, something like that, you can split right off of this and power your 5.3 and your 7-inch dash. The other option is you can use a CAN to USB adapter to plug your laptop in. So you can tune these things just like you do your HP, your Dominator, where you have full access to the software. So, all right, next thing down the line, this is a relay. So this is your fuel relay. This relay, it powers your fuel injectors, and it also powers where you see this green wire coming out. This is why you can't run a fuel pump off of this green wire. You should be tripping another relay because there's too much load across this relay between the injectors and a fuel pump. We've got a fuse. This is the fuel fuse, so this fuse is prior to this one right here. And then we've got the power tap. So this is a nice addition they did about a year ago to all their harnesses. So you've got 4 pins here. You've got a chassis ground here, a sensor ground. So if you add your dome pressure sensor, it needs a sensor ground. That's where you grab it from, is here, instead of having to cut into the harness. Your orange wire is a 5-volt reference. So if you have to power that pressure transducer, you do it from this orange wire. And then this red wire is a 12-volt source. So if you've got a drive shaft speed sensor or something that needs 12 volt, you can grab it from here as well. All right, let's work our way down this harness, see what else we find out. All right, so got a wideband connector. And now your injectors and your ignition plug are very similar to every other MPFI harness out there. So the injector plug is the same for all of them, LS and whatnot, but your ignition plug is the same for anything that's got multi-port fuel injection that's not, an LS. You'll notice that if you're an LS guy and you're watching this video, there's no coil odd or coil even. That's because it's a Ford and it has a distributor. So this right here, we're going to plug a TFI adapter into, which I'm sure, or any type of ignition adapter, which will plug into this. It'll go to your distributor and your your MSD box. Now we get to here. We got 2 loose wires coming out of here. Your points output. So this points output is going to like a MSD 6AL or 7AL or something like that. And then you've got your 12-volt battery fuel. So remember, we were looking at this relay and the fuse over here, and the relay and fuse have to get power from somewhere. This is it. Okay, so this has got to carry enough current to power your injectors and trigger a relay for a fuel pump. So don't hook this up to like a parking light or something like that. Run this to somewhere positive that's got a good connection that runs straight back to the battery, or if you want to run it straight back to the battery if you want, or if the battery's up front, just bring this right to the battery. Or any type of if you want to run it to a switched ignition, that's fine. But it's got to have a decent supply of amperage to power this relay, which powers your injectors. All right, moving right along, we've got fuel pressure, oil pressure. So these are standard issue on all of them, same thing. There's that coolant temp. So it plugs right in here to the GM style coolant temp. Get that out of the way. Manifold air temp, right here, plugs right in. TPS. So this is where you will potentially have to do a wee bit of wiring, very little. So the TPS connector, depending on what engine management system you've been using before, it's This is a 3-pin weather pack connector. They give you the other side of it. It is very simple. The colors match and everything. So you literally just cut the connector off of the TPS and terminate your wires here, plug them in, and match the colors. So it's pretty simple. So don't be intimidated by wiring here. And then we've got the idle air control motor right here, so the stock idle air control motor. And then we also have an additional map sensor lead. So the ECU's got that built-in map sensor, but this is if you have a boosted application that's going to be, positive pressure. So if you've got a 3-bar map sensor, this is already terminated for a GM style 3-bar map sensor. So if you wanted to use a GM 3-bar map sensor, you just plug it right in and disregard the blue hose coming off of the ECU, and then all of that will get selected in the software. So hopefully that explains the engine harness. It's plug and play, very simple. You should be able to nail this down and install like this down if you're not extremely nitpicky, in a day. If you're bringing it to a shop, most of the guys who wire cars for a living are going to want to, make changes to this. But for your typical enthusiast, this is literally a 4-6 hour job to get a car up and running. As long as you've already had a car that's on fuel injection and it's not something ridiculously radical. All right, let's go back into the box. Got an injector harness. It's all labeled. Cylinder 3, cylinder 4, cylinder 1, cylinder 2. So everything's labeled, plugs right in, and it says injectors on this end. So literally, all you have to do, to not be intimidated by this, just understand that all you have to do is injector, injector, bam. Male, female, okay? So notice, male, male, that doesn't work. Male, female, there we go, okay? Male, male, no good. That's why there's a male on one end and there's a female on the other, so you can't screw it up. Even if you can't read, you know that it only plugs in one way. All right. Now we've got an O2 sensor adapter. Okay, so the Terminator X uses a different style O2 sensor than the HP and the Dominator, and these have been used for a very long. This connector here has been used for a long time for O2 sensors. So they supply you with an adapter so that you can go to the new style Terminator X specific O2 sensor, which is also right here. So here's your oxygen sensor. Okay. Here's your plug. That, then like so. So now you got an O2 sensor. You should already have an O2 sensor somewhere in the engine. My suggestion here, I'll preach a little bit here. If this is a turbo car that you're putting together, put this after the turbo, okay, in the downpipe. Go anywhere between 12 and 18 inches from the turbo, after the turbo. And remember, if this is in the pipe and then the end of the pipe is only 6 inches away, you're probably going to get a lot of reversion here. You're going to get a bad O2 reading. So if you've got a really short downpipe on a turbo car, split the difference. I would rather put this closer to the turbine side of the turbo than I would the exit of the downpipe. If this is a supercharged application, nitrous or NA, you should already have a good spot somewhere right after the collector for the O2 sensor. So drop her on in. Next, we've got, oh, look at this. This is kind of slick. Here's your weld bung for an O2 sensor if you don't already have one, okay? And then there's also an adapter for that map sensor. If you're using the onboard map sensor, here's your adapter so you can go to a rubber hose. Then there's your weld bung. This is pretty slick. So this is you can buy these separately. It's kind of cool that they come with the Ford kit. What this is so that you can take this ECU, all right, new here. Look at that. That bolts right up to this bracket, and this bracket goes to the seat mount. So what you're doing is you're putting the ECU up underneath the seat. Actually, I think it's going to end up going like that. But either way, you literally lift up the passenger seat, slide this over top of the studs that are on the front, or if yours doesn't have studs, line it up with the holes, and then plug it in and drop your seat back on. So that's actually pretty slick. It's nice that it's included. This is a Fox Body specific kit, so it makes sense that if they're going to make something for a Fox Body, they include it. So that's not something that you get with the LS kits, because you shouldn't be putting LS engines in Fox Bodies. And last but not least, let me get a knife. Let's open this up. This should be our TFI adapter. So it's kind of nice. Here's more instructions. Don't literally throw them away. Like, don't. I mean, I was joking around when I tossed the instruction book. It was a joke. Read them, look at them. Here's a diagram on exactly how to hook it up. I mean, it's all plug and play, but if you got an MSD box or a Holley 600 series ignition, MSD 6 series, or a Crane high 6 ignition, something like that. So you can follow the instructions right here. But what this is a TFI adapter. So what this does is this right here, ignition. So there you go, there's your ignition. Remember that whole male and female thing? Look at that. She works. TFI. So if you got a TFI distributor, boom, plug it in, you're done. So you should be able to get one of these fired up pretty quick. There's not many terminations that you need to make in order to be successful with this. And again, if you watched my video, then you got sick and tired of listening to me, you should be busting this out. So this is a really good manual. This is actually pretty nice. Hopefully they start including these with all of them. But, and then here's some step-by-steps on the Wizard. We'll do another. There's a lot of videos out there on how to go through the Wizard. I did one on the LS system when it first came out. But here's initial power up, and what I say by Wizard is the handheld right here. Go back through the screen and make your selections based off of your engine parameters. So all in all, this is actually really nice, especially for the money. If I had a Fox body with, like, I used to have a Fox body with an S trim blower, and I had an Anderson PMS on it, and it was a nightmare. If this was available back then, life would have been a heck of a lot easier. So hopefully this kind of answers a lot of questions for y'all. And if you got any questions, just comment, or most of you probably already have my Facebook Messenger open and sending me messages on Sunday at like 2 in the morning. So just keep doing that, which is great. Have a good one, guys.